Welcome to the deep dive. We take complex sources, sometimes pretty unusual ones, and pull out the core ideas for you.
And today's source is definitely different. It's a transcript from YouTube described as an ELA research session.
Yeah, sounds like maybe a psychic reading or some kind of trance session transcript. Our goal here is to explore the ideas it presents about consciousness, healing, perception, stuff beyond the everyday physical world.
Exactly. It touches on things like karmic connections, talking to those who've passed on, the nature of reality itself, ideas that often sit outside the usual scientific box.
For sure. And the session talks about some really interesting people. There's Ela, who's speaking, her deceased father-in-law. But then it gets into Dr. Jacobo Grinberg, Zilberbaum, Maria Sabina, Pachamama, even Don Nilo Goddard.
Quite a cast of characters. So this is really an exploration of beliefs about how connected we might be and what human potential could look like beyond, well, what we normally assume.
Okay, let's start with Ela herself. She talks about a dream, a really intense one, involving her deceased father-in-law.
Right. And it wasn't just a random dream. She felt she was addressing real issues with him. Things like feeling he never really accepted her.
And specifically this belief he held, something like, mother and wife will never be family.
Exactly. And Ela believed this wasn't just, an abstract idea. She felt it directly damaged her marriage, led to its breakdown, and even caused estrangement from his side of the family.
Wow. So the dream was a chance to confront that.
It seemed so, to express how she felt, the impact it had. And afterwards, she describes this feeling. She calls it karmic cleansing.
Karmic cleansing. What does that imply in this context?
Well, it taps into that idea of karma, cause and effect across lives, maybe even generations. Unresolved stuff, patterns in families. Ela's experience suggests that even resolving something internally, maybe in a dream or altered state, can bring a sense of release.
Even if nothing changes outwardly, like she didn't necessarily reconcile with the living family.
Apparently not the focus. It was more about the internal shift. Understanding, maybe forgiveness on some level, leading to this feeling of being cleansed from that negative pattern. She even links it to, like, bigger shifts happening globally.
Interesting. Okay, so from Ela's personal experience, the session moves on to Dr. Jacobo Grinberg Zilberbaum. Who was he?
Grinberg. He was a neurophysiologist and psychologist in Mexico. Really quite fascinating. He spent years researching consciousness, specifically looking into healers, shamans, people claiming psychic abilities.
But with a scientific angle, right? Not just collecting stories.
Yes, that was his aim. He used scientific equipment, EEGs, things like that, to try and measure what was happening physiologically when these individuals were, say, in a trance state or performing healing, trying to find objective correlates for these very subjective experiences.
It's a bridge between two worlds, in a way.
He certainly tried, though, as we'll see, the interpretation of that data is, well, it's tricky.
So this ELA session gives a specific example, doesn't it? Grinberg studying a Mexican shaman.
It does. It paints this picture. Grinberg, maybe in a white coat, with his equipment all hooked up, observing this older shaman.
And what was the shaman's take on all this tech?
Well, according to the session, the shaman felt the instruments were only catching a tiny fraction of reality. He saw it as two vast worlds, the material one science studies, and a spiritual one that only overlaps slightly.
So the gear could only measure that little intersection.
Precisely. The shaman felt most of what was really happening was way beyond those instruments. It makes you think, doesn't it, about the limits of our current tools for studying consciousness.
Definitely. And what about the shaman's own practices?
Root and tradition, apparently. Using local plants, clays, knowledge passed down generations. A very different approach from, say, Western medicine, based on connection to nature, ancestral wisdom.
How did he feel during the sessions with Grinberg?
The account says he was relaxed, open, aware that only a small slice of his reality was being scrutinized.
Okay, but then things get stranger, right?
Yeah.
After the monitoring.
Yes. The session reports that Grinberg would note the physiological stuff, calm, breathing, steady heart rate, that sort of thing. But then the shaman would share things he'd seen, like visions of other entities.
Entities?
Yes, and apparently he also offered Grinberg insights about Grinberg's own life, even his ancestors, things he seemingly shouldn't have known.
Whoa, and this happened multiple times.
The transcript suggests 3 or 4 meetings like this. It points towards, well, a kind of perception that goes way beyond our normal senses, accessing information, somehow.
Which must have fascinated Grinberg. Did he study others too?
Oh, yes. The session mentions Maria Sabina, famous Mazatec shaman.
What was unique about her? according to this?
Her way of seeing, she apparently perceives illness as energetic disturbances, like whirlpools, and she used psilocybin mushrooms, small doses, for herself and sometimes clients,
Why the mushrooms?
to enhance what she called her third eye vision, to see those energy patterns more clearly, and she felt it helped patients cooperate more in their healing.
The third eye, like
Uh,
intuition, inner sight.
Sort of, yeah. That concept of knowing beyond the physical eyes. Then there was Pachamama, or Pita. Grinberg was apparently so intrigued he wrote 2 books just about her.
$2. What were her abilities supposed to be?
Exceptional, according to the source. Heightened perception, healing abilities, and bilocation.
Bilocation, being in 2 places at once.
That's the claim. Either happening spontaneously or maybe somewhat directed. It really pushes the boundaries of what we think is possible, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So Maria Sabina, seeing energy, Pachamama bilocating.
Yeah.
What did Grinberg make of all this? What were his conclusions?
Well, the session suggests he came to believe that what seems like solid matter is actually more like a soft substance, malleable.
Soft substance.
Yeah, that it could potentially be permeated, even manipulated. The session mentions hands passing through bodies like mist, if you could somehow connect to another dimension.
Did he think he could do that?
He apparently learned to sense energy from the shamans, but admitted he didn't have the same ability they did to consciously interact with that other dimension physically.
Yeah.
He could perceive it, maybe, but not manipulate it in the same way.
Which leads us to the big mystery, his disappearance. December 8th, 1994.
A date many people interested in his work know well, and this ELA session offers a very specific, very unconventional explanation.
Okay, what does Ela see happening?
She describes seeing Grinberg taken by a luminous being, she says, from a higher dimension.
Taken? How?
She describes this being standing behind him, enveloping him in light, and then they both just vanish. Poof.
Wow, okay. That's
Yeah.
not the standard explanation.
Not even close. And her vision didn't stop there. She perceived him being transported instantly to a remote jungle setting.
Still with the being.
It's not entirely clear, but he's there, observing a shamanic ritual. But the people in the ritual can't see him,
He's invisible to them.
apparently. And even more strangely, Ela also saw 2 discarnate shaman figures, spirits, essentially, who were visible to Grinberg, assisting the living shaman.
So Grinberg could see both the physical ritual and these non-physical helpers.
That's the implication, that his perception was operating on multiple levels. And then, according to Ela's vision, he just reappeared, rematerialized back where he vanished from.
The whole sequence is just mind-bending, whether you take it literally or, symbolically.
It definitely points to a belief in radically different states of being, other dimensions, consciousness operating outside the body, things way outside our normal framework.
So what happened after the supposed disappearance and reappearance event, according to the session?
Ela perceived him trying to document these experiences, but struggling. How do you put these incredibly subtle, energetic things into ordinary language?
Right, and he worried people wouldn't believe him, especially the scientific community.
Exactly. A common problem for people reporting these kinds of non-ordinary experiences. It's hard to translate. Ela saw him living very remotely, in a little hut near the jungle, away from the city, like he needed space to process it all.
His wife. Was she involved?
The session mentions his wife also experienced similar things appearing and disappearing, which adds another layer, suggesting maybe a shared sensitivity or journey.
Okay, so then the session addresses the end of his physical life.
Yes, Ela reports a vision of his hut burning in flames.
And his notes, all that research, what happened to it?
It's a bit of a mixed bag, according to her perception. Some notes, the more grounded ones perhaps, were given to someone connected to publishing and did eventually get published.
So some work survived.
Some, yes, but other notes, the really esoteric stuff, things maybe even he didn't fully grasp, they apparently vanished physically.
Vanished.
Physically gone, but she perceives them still existing, etherically, hidden away in a chest somewhere in the subtle realms. Their future uncertain. Adds to the whole mystery, really.
Definitely. So where does Ela perceive Grinberg being now? What's his current state?
She sees him as non-corporeal, out of the body, but active.
Yeah, active how?
Engaged in teaching, transmitting wisdom to other, entities or souls preparing to incarnate on Earth, to help humanity. He's part of a larger group effort focused on our well-being.
And he's aware of things here, like the year.
Yes. She mentions he's aware it's 2024, which is quite a claim, isn't it? Existing outside time as we know it, but still tuned in.
It really is. What's his perspective on Earth right now from that vantage point?
He apparently sees it as layered. Lots of misinformation, manipulation, a kind of darkness that needs piercing.
Piercing.
Yeah, like needing to break through it to let light from higher realms in. He predicts a gradual increase in that light and understanding over the next 10 years or so, through a sort of cleansing and hot energy dissolving the old errors and manipulations. He estimates consciousness shifting from maybe 30% aligned with this light now up to potentially 40%, despite
The
resistance.
slow awakening, maybe?
Seems like it. But he also foresees significant physical events accompanying this shift,
Like what?
specifically rising water levels, oceans inundating coastal areas as part of this planetary cleansing.
That's a pretty dramatic prediction. Any plans for him to come back? Reincarnate?
Apparently not anytime soon. He's focused on his current non-physical work. He also clarified his disappearance. It wasn't just vanishing, it was learning to live in both realms, physical and subtle, simultaneously.
And his wife is still with him?
Yes, confirmed to be with him in the non-physical state.
So what's the big takeaway message from him?
The main thing seems to be that the spiritual realm is primary. It underlies the material world, which will ultimately have to align with it. He also touched on privacy. Personal lives aren't an open book even there, but there's openness to spiritual truth.
What about those rumors that he was, kidnapped or imprisoned by the CIA or someone trying to get his research?
He addressed that, according to the session. So there was interest from intelligence agencies, but he had strong protection from, well, beings of light, which prevented anything like that.
And he was okay with this session being shared.
Yes, agreement was given.
Okay, then the session shifts focus again to Neville Goddard.
Yeah, Neville Goddard. Introduced here, somewhat inaccurately, as a Nobel laureate, but definitely known as a mystic, an influential teacher of New Thought ideas, with his own esoteric take on the Bible.
Right. And what's his perspective from the non-physical, according to Ela?
He sees Earth as this intense proving ground. Difficult, dangerous even, but offering incredibly rapid spiritual growth because of those challenges.
An accelerated learning environment, maybe?
You could say that. Interestingly, he's apparently aware of the Gotthard-based tunnel in the Alps, which shares his name, sort of.
The tunnel. What does he think of it?
He views the opening ceremony they had as theatrical, yes, but with dark side undertones, as Ela puts it. Even though it was presented as art, he perceived some less than positive energies woven into it.
So what's his core message then?
It really comes down to individual choice. He stresses the absolute importance of aligning your choices, moment by moment, with light and truth. Life is that personal path of choices.
And what about his teachings on manifestation? Creating your reality.
He clarified that. So the core isn't just getting stuff. It's about ensuring every choice, big or small, aligns with light. Material success without that inner alignment. Temporary. Doesn't transfer.
So the real value is internal.
Exactly. Inner choices, intention for growth, becoming more authentic. That's what has lasting worth from his perspective.
Did he comment on the healing technique mentioned earlier, the one with the altered state and magic mirror visualization?
He did. He validated it, apparently. Saw it as a helpful way to create a connection, a passage to higher realms. He felt it gives insight into transformation and really encourages the person's desire for positive change and connection to their higher self.
So it fits with his ideas about focused intention.
Seems to align quite well, yes. Using visualization to bridge toward a desired state, guided by connection to spirit.
Right. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, pulling from this one very unique source. What are the main threads running through it?
Well, we've definitely explored communication beyond the physical dreams, trance states, entities, ideas about consciousness being more than just the brain, different healing approaches from shamanic traditions to visualization, and these perspectives on, global shifts in human potential.
It's fascinating stuff. The accounts around Grinberg, his research, his disappearance, Maria Sabina, Pachamama, it's all quite provocative, isn't it? Leaves you with a lot to mull over.
Absolutely. It really challenges conventional views, the interconnectedness, the potential for perception beyond our senses. It's certainly food for thought.
So, the final thought for you, listening. How do these ideas, maybe strange as some seem, challenge or expand your view of reality? What potential might lie dormant, waiting to be explored? Maybe it sparks some curiosity to look further into these figures and concepts.
Definitely worth considering. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.